Good morning. Good morning, everybody in Facebook land. Beautiful Sunday. Very cold. It sort of snowed last night. Not enough to stick. Got in like really late, around 1:30, around 2. Didn't go to bed till about 2. And then got up around 6:30, 6 o'clock. And perfectly feel great. And so, yeah, it's quite interesting, the turn of events with Jilly Juice, with what I'm promoting. And I never thought that I would be really giving the benefits of the vaccines and why I am promoting them. Okay. And I have been promoting them, but I don't think I ever made an actual video. I might have made an actual video why vaccines are beneficial. And it has offended the crowd out there that I used to entertain, the anti-vax crowd, which I still have thousands or hundreds and hundreds of followers or friends that are still highly into the anti-vax crowd. And the reason why I'm promoting them is because we live in a society where we still have cancer, disease, and chronic illness, and aging, and autoimmunity, and we have viruses, and we have weak bodies, and we have evidence to show statistically, if we don't implement modern medicine, that there are high infant mortality rates, and then you have chaos and political unrest and other instabilities, that third world nations are not prospering because they don't have a stable, civilized society they can trust to bring up their children, as well as die peacefully if that's their choice. And so the West has attempted to try to, yes, get everybody on the same page so everybody has a equal chance at life. Now, what you do with your life is completely up to you. But the whole point of the West is everybody has an equal chance at life. And so now we have to figure out, well, what is life and what is death and all this other stuff. And it's, it gets very distracting because of everyone's perception. And then we bring in time, and then we bring in belief systems, and then it gets so like, oh my God. And people go on information overload and then they check out, which I completely understand, because it's a lot of information to try to figure out everybody's belief systems and what they describe, what is life and what is death, and then all the allegories and all the definitions and all the science. And it's just like, it's too much, and I completely get it. So I try to make it as easy as possible, but I still, have to think about how to get away from all the details but you have to go through the details first to understand the bigger picture. Once you understand the components that make up the bigger picture, then you don't have to go to the details all the time and get lost in the details. You then learn how to speak in a bigger picture form, and then people will understand how the details then play a part, and then they can go and look at their life, and it's easier. But you have to start from the cell first before you actually understand the human. And that's one of the hardest things. People are trying to understand the human before they understand the cell, and they have all these misconceptions. So those are one of the challenges that I'm facing, which it's getting easier as I'm doing the Jilly Juice. But I want to make sure that something is clear as far as the Jilly Juice and babies. So Similac and formula is not poison. Okay, soy formula is not poison. None of these formulas are poison. That is approved by the FDA, pediatricians, whatever. All the formula, everything that is made for a baby, that has all the different minerals and fatty acids and pro-hormones, is perfectly safe. Mother's milk, if you're pumping it, or if you're producing it at the level that you should, with all of the components in mother's milk, and you are relatively healthy, okay, that is perfectly fine. Okay, so everything on the market, the formula, mother's milk, breast milk, whatever, even if you get it donated by somebody else, perfectly fine, okay? And J juice should be somewhere attached to it somewhere. You should never, ever just give any baby, whether it's a newborn all the way to whatever stage of life they are in childhood, never, ever only give them the J juice, because they need fatty acids, they need amino acids, they need prohormones, and they need minerals, okay? So I don't want anybody saying, oh, I'm just going to give J juice just to my kid, because that is not what I am putting out there. It's like, we don't give supplements to children. You listen to if you don't know what you're doing, listen to your doctor and give whatever treatments, whatever suggestions they have, and then also have J juice in the background somewhere. J juice is not like the only thing that people eat. Okay, now some people who are hardcore adults who have issues that want to juice fast, that's up to them. But they don't need to do that. That's not what I have ever promoted or required anyone to do, is just do the juice and that's it, no food, no anything else. Because there is a diverse food supply, but we are cognizant of what type of foods we bring in our body that cause imbalances. And so for us to balance out the body, there are certain foods we mitigate in the beginning and bring in the J juice, but the food supply is still very diverse as far as the protocol, okay? But as far as babies, you're not playing diet with babies. We're not doing vegan and vegetarian and only giving the juice to the babies. You give them the Similac, the formula, whatever's on the market. There's a little powder and you add water to it, rice cereal, whatever stages of food at the stages of childhood that's appropriate, you do that. And then you also give the J juice. Not so much, but just enough to enhance and help the body develop. It's just one component of a baby's diverse food supply that is appropriate at the age of development, okay? So I want to make that clear to everybody, all right? So there's no misunderstanding at all. All right, so I had to figure out how to explain life and death, because that's one of the hardest things to explain to people, life and death indicators, and the percentages of what's your percentage to live, what is your percentage to die, and then you get diagnosed. And just like anything, here's the thing. We can't give any percentages other than 50% when it comes to life and death. We can't say 20% to live, 20% to die, 10% living, 10% dead. Okay, because it's no different than when you're trying to predict how the market's going to be and predict how, like, General Electric is going to I don't know, increase their share earnings or something. Okay, they give all these predictions, but anything can happen between the time they predict something to when it actually happens at whatever, I guess. And there's, I mean, they can't even predict a day of when it's going to go up 50% or 20% or decrease or whatever. Okay, so but here's the thing. How do you predict market trends? You look at indicators. Doesn't mean it's absolute. You just look at indicators, because no matter what, it's going to be a life of the company or the death of the company. But if there are favorable indicators that will say this company is going to keep going based upon the need out there, the prices, and all of their past stock market and all this other stuff, okay, then you say, okay, most likely it's going to be a safe investment to invest in this blue chip stock because they've been around forever, very good, CEO, no major issues, and there is a need and they're meeting the needs and they have a proper business process. So yes, the indicators are favorable that this company is going to live. So, but every company has 50% chance of living and a 50% chance of dying. And then what are the indicators? Well, there are some major indicators, okay? And I'm sure people out there that know like business, and there's some major things that would say whether a business is going to die or it's going to live. And usually money has a lot to do with it. Money, if you have no money in the company, probably those are the major indicators that it's going to die. And there's a lot of money in that company, and with that money, you're buying the right things. I guess that could be a major indicator it's going to live. But it doesn't mean money is going to really be that absolute, that, because you can have throw money at a company and they just utilize it wrong, and then the company dies and everything goes to shit. So anyways, but when it comes to the human body, there are two absolutes. There's absolute life and absolute death. And you have a 50% chance at each of them. And there are two major indicators. Pain, so imminent life and imminent death. Indicators for imminent life and imminent death is pain. That's what the hardest thing, and that's why my J juice gets so mischaracterized, misunderstood, because people have been living on this long ass death trajectory and pain has always been involved. So they can't possibly wrap their mind around that for imminent life, pain is also involved, okay? So when we are given the chance at life, at conception, at birth, and all of that, when we're given the chance at life, at conception, we have now in our society, as well as in third world nations, the life process is actually a very prolonged death process. Yes, we say we're living, but the end result is always death. So we're not really living per se, okay? That's where things get confused. We are actually living a very prolonged death process. Somebody gave us life, and it's up to us to figure out how to keep it. And then there are indicators that you're gonna live how long? We can't even give you a freaking value. There is no way to give you a value of how long you're gonna live. But there are favorable indicators that let you know, based upon the evidence already out there, that most likely if you feed yourself, you're probably gonna live another day. But here's the thing, even feeding yourself doesn't mean that you're gonna live another day, because there are people that are so malnourished, totally malfunction, regardless of the stage of life they're in. They eat something, they still die. Okay? So we can't even use food as a way to say, oh yeah, if you eat food, you're gonna have a 50% chance of living. Okay? That's where it gets really, really distracting. And this is where it's so hard to pinpoint, how do you predict life and death? Because so many freaking factors, but there are indicators. Pain, so predictors and indicators of imminent life and imminent death is pain. Okay? And then to even get to the point of even talking about this is the fact that we are able to give life, because that, when we bring it back to like the infant mortality rate in sub-Saharan desert of Africa, you are seeing like the West in its infancy. It's like when you look at third world nations, you're looking at the past, the archaic past of the West. It's like we're looking at our ancestors when you think about it, what they went through to get to where we are today. So when you look at Liberia and the chaos and the death and the rapes and all that stuff, you are actually seeing what happened in the caveman days. You're actually seeing what happened back in the 1500s, 1200s, back in the Mongols, back before modern medicine. I mean, because you read history about what Julius Caesar did, what Caligula did, what Genghis Khan did, and it's not exactly they weren't all civilized. I mean, civilized. They did bring life into the world, but they definitely brought down the hammer and brought death too. Okay, so if we look and see how the West impacts third world nations, and when you look at statistics that they have put out there as far as the infant mortality rate, because that really is the conception of life, is infancy. That's when you reproduce, that is the start of life. Regardless of how the baby came to be, I don't care all of those distractions. But at conception and at birth, that's the start of life. Conception, that's the start of life. Okay? And you have a 50% chance rate of life or death. Okay, so no different than like heads and tails when you flip a coin. You only have two chances, heads or tails. So if heads is life and tails is death, every single thing that you do gives you a 50% chance of life and 50% at death. Now, forget the time concept. Time is irrelevant, because no matter what, you could be on a very long death trajectory or a very short death trajectory. You could be on a very long life trajectory or be on a very short life trajectory. It doesn't matter. the end result is the same. So it's always going to be 50%. And there's no way to give anything but 50% because you only have two chances, only two absolutes. Because what other choice is there between life and death? You have no other choice between life and death. There's no third option. What's the third option? If there's a third option, then you have, a three-tier type of thing. Okay? And so, but we don't have a three-tier. We don't have a three-sided coin. Okay? We don't. So now we have to understand that really everything is predicated upon 50% chance rates. Okay? So at conception and at birth, you have a 50% chance rate your baby will live or die at conception or at birth. Pain is the indicator of imminent life or imminent death. And when mothers bear, there's pain during sex. Yeah, it can be pleasurable. But when you are procreating or in the act of coitus, it can be very painful. Look at the virgins. It's painful the first time. Okay? So right there is pain is the indicator of imminent life. And then you go through 9 months of pregnancy. And if relative to the state of your body, you're going to go through morning sickness and pain and all this stuff. And you see how some mothers react to pregnancy. Not all can really handle pregnancy. It's tough. And then when you actually birth, oh my God, that's why you have the epidurals and even birthing a baby is painful. So what's the indicator of imminent life is pain. Okay, but man has turned reproduction into a freaking recreation. And so people don't even understand what reproduction is anymore because they've confused it with recreation, and then it gets all lost in all the distractions, and then there goes the whole meaning of life and death because it gets lost in porn and whatever else. Okay, so pain is an indicator of life. It's also of imminent life, but it's also an indicator of imminent death because when you get diagnosed, okay, and then you go through all these different treatments, you're in pain. I mean, watching my high school friend go through all the treatments that he went through, the chemotherapy and the cannabis. It wasn't just chemotherapy and the immunotherapies he went through. He was taking the cannabis and whatever else his friends were giving him or suggesting to him, and he was going through the pain. And he left this world in freaking pain. Okay? It didn't matter how much morphine he took or how much cannabis he was taking while he was going through all the immunotherapies and the operations to cut off the nerves in his pancreas. Imminent death during that process was pain. So if you have imminent life at conception and at birth, and you have imminent life or imminent pain at imminent death, now you have to understand what is imminent life or imminent death predicated upon. Okay, what is this pain predicated on? Okay, now you got to get into the factors. And this is how you break, this is for Kevin. This is how we need to break this down because we got to break this down to the freaking cellular level. Pain is the indicator of life and death. You have to understand it and not get lost in all the distractions of our society. So the pain indicator of imminent life or imminent death is predicated upon the geography, where the hell you live. Okay, because those factor into how the body survives. The socioeconomic status, your access to resources, poverty versus rich, but even poverty and rich, people are malnourished. They're just malnourished in different ways. When you have leaky gut, you're malnourished and you have all these imbalances and you look like an orc from the Lord of the Rings. You can go Google that and look at what the orcs look like in the Lord of the Rings and you see how they've been given life and they're all messed up. Or you have starvation like Ethiopia. So if you have really no access to resources, you'll be like Ethiopians, starving with bloated bellies and flies. I've seen that back in the 80s when they were showing, Feed the World or something, or We Are the World. And they're talking about trying to feed Africa and feed all these places that are starving. Okay? Weather is a major, indicator of how the body and a society is going to then react and deal with life and death. Okay? Food, access to food. What types of foods are you eating based upon the imbalances, because people aren't doing J juice, okay? So now they're trying to feed it themselves based upon the imbalances in their body. And then that's why you have functional medicine to figure out how to balance the body with food and with whatever else, remedies. Okay, and then you have lifestyle, course, and then belief systems. Doesn't matter what they are. I mean, you can list them all out and get lost in those details, but I'm not going down all of these rabbit holes. I'm not going down the rabbit holes of geography or socioeconomic status or weather or food or lifestyle or belief systems, because you can go Google all of what geography is and socioeconomic status and weather and food and lifestyle and belief systems, impacting the genetics of the mother and the father as well as their offspring. So how are these factors of geography, socioeconomic status, weather, food, lifestyle, and belief system impacting the genetics of the mother and father as well as the offspring? So not only in utero, as well as what the parents already are going to pass down to the kid, but then how are those factors of geography, socioeconomics, weather, food, lifestyle, belief systems impacting the child when they were given life? So now they have a life. Now this is where people get all like crazy, like, oh my God, you know, we gave these vaccines to these kids and now they're all like full of polio or they're paralyzed or something. And it's like, at least they have a life that otherwise would not have a life if it wasn't for modern medicine. Now we have to figure out how to then get other things in place so the parents are stronger and they're not having adverse reactions to an environment they're already exposed to that caused the baby to die to begin with. But with the medical intervention, yeah, they're half paralyzed, but at least they're alive. So this is what the West is attempting to do, is to now make villages that are weak more civilized to then support a stronger society, so that way they can be exposed to globalism and won't react to any new entities in the environment, because that's what vaccines are, introducing new entities to an environment that's going to happen anyways, no matter what. If they were in some remote village, no one messes with them. But there are places where they're not remote. In parts of Africa, yes, that are not remote. And when you have global eco-tourists coming in, bringing in all of their data, their viruses and bacteria, you're going to have a village understand the transition of these new introductions to pathogens. And this is where the vaccine campaigns come in to begin with. But what happens is people don't understand that they have to have a transition process if the body is weak. And so they mischaracterize that the vaccines cause their issues. Well, at least they're alive, because they wouldn't be around if it wasn't for modern medicine. But not everybody understands that, because they don't take themselves back to Liberia. We have so many people that are stuck in their bubble that they don't go out of their little town of like either Ohio or Belgium. I'm not saying you, Kevin, but there are people that stay in their holes of the West. They don't understand what it's like to live in Liberia. They read stuff, but they don't really understand conceptually what it's actually like to bring themselves back to before modern medicine, before actual like civilization, a very well-functioning society. Because as soon as you bring in a diverse society, you have to have services and products and things to support so many different types of people. So when you only have one type of people, like let's say in Liberia, and there wasn't anybody coming in, then they did whatever they had to do. Everything was based upon the rule of the jungle, pure Darwinism. Then you have people who practice satanic stuff that are cannibalizing each other and all that, and that's not something that the West really promotes, or the East. But there are people that do that. Doesn't mean it's right, and I don't agree with it, but you know, that's something for the world court to figure out, okay? And so then you have pure Darwinism. But as soon as you bring in a diverse society and where you give everybody a chance at life, now you have to be able to support it and figure it out, okay? So so you have to, first of all, you have to bring in a life first. And so we have seen that the infant mortality rates in third world countries are actually declining. And so there's a higher birth rate, or a decline in the infant mortality rate. which means now we have cured death with disease. Okay? And that's one of the hardest things people to understand. Ah, Pia, very interesting, Pia. I like this comment. I like this comment better than the other comments. Hold on. This gives us a lot of good info. The most ill people in hospitals in the Western world are malnourished. They are feeding them with protein pudding. They are totally empty from energy, nutrient food for the illnesses. Hospitals is hospice, so they die like an African without nutrition. Yes. See, you can be rich and be poor and still suffer the same diseases. You're not getting enough food, so you already have issues anyways, or you're getting so much food, but your body can't process it. Okay? And so now we have to focus on, with everybody, is that we have to give life first in order for us to then know how to sustain it. But if you don't give life at all, then how do you sustain it if it's not even there? Yeah, we could say, okay, we can eradicate the vaccine program, eradicate all of modern medicine, and let Mother Nature be the one to judge who lives and who dies. But that means most of us would be gone. We wouldn't be here. So how can we balance out, modern medicine and society to give life, but then not have it so imbalanced that it also causes death? And that's one of the things that's so hard to conceptualize in a world that is so like correlation equals causation. Okay, so that's why first we have to focus on understanding how life, why it's important to promote life, why it's important to promote vaccines in third world countries and even in the West, because we have already people who are being born in a society that's so aggressive in the bacteria and the viruses that these kids are getting like SIDS. I mean, you look at the Amish. They have a very low vaccination rate and a high SIDS rate because Mother Nature said, okay, this kid's weak. We're not going to allow it to live. But then man comes in, figures out that there's a SIDS gene. And you know what? That SIDS gene is based upon the impact of the fatty acids. There wasn't enough fatty acids, or there was fatty acid imbalance, and the kid was supposed to die, but modern man came in and messed with the genes and probably found ways to cure SIDS. But when you have cures, guess what? It leads to disease and then death. And that is our society, is the cures, disease, and death train that we live on. Okay? So if we stop looking for the cure, we would stop having death and disease. But that's not the purview of those that want the shortcuts. They want all the cures. Well, then they'll get the death and disease. They can't be pissed off. So I don't care if I've lost a lot of followers when it comes to the anti-vax, because they don't realize why it happened to begin with. Hey, honey, I'm on Facebook Live. What? I know, I'm always distracted. But yeah, I know I've lost some followers and some people that are just like, oh my God, I revered you so much, Jillian, because, of your anti-vax stance. And I was catering to the anti-vax crowd for a few years, thinking that was my niche crowd. And now come to find out, no, they are the antithesis of the J juice. And so the J juice needs to be an attachment to everything that we do. See, here's the thing. When you get diagnosed with whatever, okay? So when you're just being born, which is pain, is imminent life, you need the J juice to sustain it, to help with the development, okay? That's all good, Pia. And then when you get diagnosed with an aggressive disease, you need J juice along with whatever therapy, because not everyone's going to do the J juice. Not everybody is. So you have to promote chemotherapy or cannabis or whatever suggestion the doctor and oncologist has, to make sure that the person at least has a 50% chance rate of living or dying. But if you're that weak, you're going to die. And if you're that strong, you're going to live. But however, J juice is that third option to help you sustain life, because pain is healing. And if you give it the right components, the indicators and the odds are going to be in your favor to live despite the difficulties at birth and at conception, and despite the difficulties at a diagnosis. So even a hospice patient has a 50% chance at living if they're able to handle the pain, which is imminent life. But right now they can't handle the pain at imminent death because they have been told that pain is bad, so they keep taking medications, which is a chemistry that is a complete antithesis of life, and this is what causes the death. Okay? So right now, humans on this earth are in a long-ass death trajectory, and some have a shorter death trajectory. Okay? And so it's based upon all the cures, because the cycle of cures, disease, and death is what we're on right now. And so I'm jumping off that train. And it's a very difficult train to jump off of, especially in our society who has never even heard the possibility of imminent life, or imminent life, indefinite life, because they're so used to death. And we live in a death culture. We celebrate death as if it was something that is a part of life. Yeah, it is if you don't follow the rules of life. But if you are following the natural law of life, death would not be an option. It would be an option for somebody else. Okay, so we have to understand why vaccines exist. We have to understand why chemotherapy exists. And if you don't, then you'll stay on that trend. And that's why all my little anti-vaxxers are mocking me and everything, going like, laughing at some of my posts, because they just like, well, what the hell? Your book has anti-vax stuff. You've been anti-vax. Because now I'm breaking it down to showing people what it was like when we didn't have vaccines. And if we are promoting life, we got to give life a chance and then understand how to sustain it. And then understand that for imminent life and imminent death, pain is involved. And then there are specific factors that make that up, that create the absolutes of life and death. And then we can then understand the J juice. I don't want to turn to chemotherapy and cannabis and all these remedies and aspirins and all that stuff. I want everyone to embrace pain as imminent life, but people are not going to. So if you want to take a medication or chemotherapy and you think the odds are in your favor, you're going to survive the therapies, do what you got to do. But there are indicators to say that the odds will not be in your favor from that therapy, whether it's a drug or it's a procedure or a therapy. And so and I can't give a percentage rate because there's too many factors that will determine if a person is going to live or die. So you still got to live with the 50% chance rate of life and death. And then pain is an indicator of imminent life and imminent death. Okay? And you take away all of the stuff out there that distracts people. Time is a distraction. Oh yeah, I'm buying myself time. Do you know what you bring to the table? Can you afford to do that therapy? Not everybody can afford to do these therapies, but they do because they don't understand how these odds are. Yeah, you might live through a therapy or you might die. 50% chance. There's no third option. There is no third option in this. So now you have to understand the indicators and the factors that make up these indicators. Okay, and what are these factors? Hold on. Geography, socioeconomic status, weather, food, lifestyle, and belief systems, impacting the genetics of the mother and the father, as well as the offspring. So this is one of probably the hardest concepts to get across, because I do need to promote the vaccine campaign. Because I'm gonna tell you, people out there in the third world nations that are so freaking poor, like in Liberia, living pure Darwinism, they're not gonna go and sit and do J juice, Some might, if they're that advanced, like in Nigeria, where they have some kind of like established society where they get access to pink Himalayan salt and cabbage and kale in jars, and they have a steady, environment where they can sit and watch something ferment and drink it and go through the pain is healing process. No, they don't have that luxury like we do. They don't have the luxury to get cancer and obesity, which some of them do. They don't have the luxury to get all these diseases that the first world gets. They do have some, but not as many. But you know why? Because people die. It's pure Darwinism. They don't have the luxury to have the diseases that we do. Okay? So we have to intervene and give a chance at life and then start helping them set up their society so it can support the life that we're giving them. That's what our society is supporting the life that we are giving people the chance to live. That's how we have to see vaccines, modern medicine, and biotechnology. And that's what Bill Gates is attempting to do, is to give life and then attempt at find a way to support the diverse lives that are out there. Regardless of your politics, it doesn't matter your politics. If you're going to give life, you better know how to support it. And that's no different than when we have mothers and fathers out there, they're having sex. Okay, it happens. You're 18 years old, you have sex, you have a baby, and you don't want to support it. Okay, fine. We have systems in place to help with that because that's already been a factor. We know that those things happen. But out there in the jungle, if you're going to give life to a baby, you better know how to support it. If not, the baby's going to die. So the whole point of the vaccine campaign is not to give life and not give it a support. Okay? The whole point of the vaccine campaign is to give life, and then the clean water and the building of the villages and education and access to resources and trade and all this other stuff then comes into play to help support the life that we're giving these different third world countries. And that's the whole point of why the West is the way it is and why the conspiracy theories and the anti-vaxxers and the anti-government people are trying to bring us back to chaos, back to a third world status. And you're seeing it in California. California is going to be the outcome of people's mentality to bring us back to a third world status. And let them. They will be an example of what not to do. Okay? So, just watch the video from the beginning because there's some pretty good information in the beginning. And you guys have a great Sunday. I'm going to do my thing. And maybe find a different way to say this. Easier. I don't know if it gets any easier than this when you deal with so many different factors and so many different things. Okay? All right. Have a good day.